Okay, hey guys, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create a basic cowl neckline for your basic bodice block. So this is obviously the tutorial page that we're looking at right now, which is great. Obviously you can read a little bit about what the cowl neck is all about, and also we have some basic requirements when it comes to your block. Also there's two downloads which are very important to use with this tutorial. So this tutorial basically allows us to transform one of your basic blocks into a cowl neck using Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to show you step by step how to do that in Adobe Illustrator. You can also follow this tutorial using manual pattern cutting, in other words using your PDF paper patterns. It's simply a case of cutting and slashing and obviously marking the lines as we would in Illustrator. So yeah, it's possible to do both. It just takes a little bit of time and patience. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go to the lab. Okay, hang on a minute, let's just make this a little bit smaller. Okay, here we go, let's go back. Okay, this is a bit simpler. Okay, let's go into the lab. And first of all, we're going to basically draft our block. So now I've logged in with my account, which means I have access to my library and all my orders. This is probably a better idea because it means you can save all of your past and previous orders and keep them up to date. If you're a guest user, it's a little bit harder to find your patterns. You'd have to go to the link through your email. Anyway, we have tutorials about guest accounts and actual accounts, or registered accounts. But anyway, so I have already created a profile or a range of different profiles here. You can also select from one of our UK standard sizes. So let's say UK standard size 10. As you can see, we now draft with a 10. Also, if you click on this button, you can see that we have lots more measurements. It shows you what measurements go into making up a size 10. Okay, we have different international sizes here, and obviously all the different measurements. Anyway, let's just click 10. But I'm actually going to use Francesca, which is my standard profile. It's what the dress or the cowl neck that we're using was made on, or made using. So first of all, we're going to select the block, which is the basic requirements for this this cowl neck. So first of all, we're going to go for the bodice block. We're going to go next. And we're going to go for waist shaping, and we're going to go for automatic fit. You can obviously change the fit of your garment or your basic block just by adding it in here, but we're going to go for automatic. Gives you just the right amount of ease to move and to breathe comfortably. So it's a well-fitting block. Let's go next, and I'm going to click no seam. Just here, you can have seam. Basically for this block, we rely on not having a seam on the center front, so we want to click no seam. As you can see, your block changes on the right hand side here, so we have no seam. Next, we're going to go for the classic block, or the classic dark configuration. This has already been ticked because I've done this tutorial once or twice. Then we're going to go next, and we're going to go to the back. So now we can choose to have either a zip on the side, or a zip or an opening on the back. So an opening on the side or an opening on the back. If you want an opening on the back, click seam for the back. If you want it on the side, then just obviously click no seam for the back, and there you would put your zip. But let's go seam. Next I'm going to go for, you can choose pretty much any one of these, it's completely up to you, but I'm going to go for the standard mid-shoulder for this block, or this tutorial. Click next. And obviously this block doesn't actually have a sleeve, we're drafting without one, but it's always good practice to keep your sleeve with your block just in case you want to follow one of our other tutorials and draft a different sleeve for this neckline to create quite a unique garment. So let's say have like a little cap sleeve, or maybe a long sleeve or a shirt sleeve, whatever options we have or tutorials we have available at that time. So yeah, just keep this selected, and I would recommend using a sleeve cap ease of 2 centimeters. Okay, next we're going to go to the purchase screen or download screen. Because we're going to be using an E pattern, so if you're following the Adobe Illustrator digital pattern cutting tutorial, then we would ask you to download the E pattern version of this block. If you want to do it manually, then obviously you can use the paper PDF pattern download. If you are using the digital version and you're following this tutorial in Adobe Illustrator, you don't need to worry about seam allowance because it comes without seam allowance, because we add that to our block at the very end. Obviously you can choose and select and put in your custom fields here for seam allowance when it comes to your PDF pattern download. Anyway, I'm going to add this to my cart. There we go, and I'm just going to go to my checkout. Perfect. Obviously I'm an admin, so no payment is required, but you'd have to go through the PayPal gateway. And obviously before you do that, just click I've read and agreed to the terms and conditions. This just simply says what you can actually do with our blocks, which is pretty much everything except for sell the actual block itself. But have a look at those to get full insight into what you can actually do, but pretty much they're all royalty free. So let's just go confirm. And that would obviously take you to your payment gateway PayPal, but obviously once you've completed your payment you'll come to this page here, which is your order details, and you can find that by going to my account. I believe this is going to be my library soon, and obviously my orders, and you can find it in there by the order number. Okay, so first of all, you can obviously view your invoice. You can also edit your measurements for this block, and you can also add notes, but there's other tutorials that explain these buttons. But first of all, as you can see here, we have the bodice block, and we have the basic set-in sleeve block, and it gives you all the information you need when it comes to what eases and what shaping and what darts actually go into these blocks. So first of all, I'm just going to download and preview, or preview and download my basic bodice block. Looks lovely. Perfect. I know this block works. You can also, as I said, edit your measurements. And you can also follow our troubleshooting guide. Maybe it's not looking quite right, or it's looking a little bit broken. This troubleshooting guide will help you understand how to correct your ill-fitting blocks due to inaccurate measurements. But I'm going to go download. I'm just going to basically save it on my desktop in a folder. I'm going to name it, that's the profile 3C Francesca Cowl neck tutorial. There we go. Create. Lovely, and then in there I'm just going to save it as 3C Francesca bodice. Save. Okay, next I'm going to go to my sleeve. Once again, it's really important to download and keep these together because they match. Redrafting might cause a different sleeve. So let's just obviously once again have a look at the sleeve, it's great. Download, you can also edit the measurements again. And here I'm just going to put sleeve. So it's in the Francesca 3C cowl neck tutorial, and I'm naming this sleeve and this one bodice, so it's very clear what they are and what they're doing. Great, so they've now been downloaded to my desktop. I can close this, and let's go back to our cowl neck tutorial just here. Okay, so this is really important. Download the cutting table and also the PDF pattern pack. The cutting table is simply a platform or an artboard or a space within Adobe Illustrator that allows you to adjust your pattern. It's got also like a key on there which allows you to add markings, notches, grain lines and other assets that will help you finish off your final pattern. And the PDF pack is simply a template of variety of different PDF sizes, so US letter A4, A3, A2, A1, A0, and this basically allows you to turn your finished pattern into a printable PDF pattern, and it also comes with one touch or one click seam allowances in 0.5, 1 cm, 1.5 and also inches as well, which is great, so this is really handy. So yeah, just go ahead and download your PDF pattern pack, and I would say save it to the same folder. So this one I've already prepared. I'm just going to save it in PDF print templates, and also let's just download the cutting table. Same folder, just so it's all in one folder on your desktop to keep it nice and simple. Okay, so let's click on our folder, and these are our patterns. Let's get rid of that. These are our patterns that we downloaded for the bodice and the sleeve, and also we have the two packs. Let's just double click, and this should unzip it. If you're using Windows, you can use something like 7-zip or WinZip to unzip these. So we can get rid of that one. Now it's been unzipped, and same for this one. Let's just remove that. And then in here you can see you have your PDF templates. We'll come to those later. And here you have your cutting table. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the cutting table in Adobe Illustrator. Let's just double click it. And here we go. So this is your cutting table, and as you can see, it's a massive, massive square that allows you all the space you need to basically draft your patterns. Okay, which is great. Okay, so once inside Adobe Illustrator, I'm going to go to File and then Open, and then go to my two blocks. In fact, I'm not going to use the sleeve because we're not focusing on this today. I'm going to use my bodice, but it's good to have it in the same folder. So I'm going to open up my bodice block. There we go. Let's just zoom out. Okay, so a few basic tools here when it comes to navigating around Adobe Illustrator. Now we have a tutorial that shows you how to use Adobe Illustrator as a pattern cutting platform, but just make it easier for now. Hold down the space key on your keyboard and then click and drag allows you to move around the page. Okay, I'm holding down my space bar and I'm just clicking and dragging. Also, if you use Control or Command on the Mac, Command plus plus plus, minus 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 allows you to zoom in and out of your block. So using these two combinations, you can move, zoom in, zoom out, move. Okay, so use those, get the hang of it. It's really, really helpful. So first of all, I'm going to take this block and put it into my cutting table. So I'm just going to go Command A, which is basically select all, and I'm going to go Edit, Copy, and then paste it onto my cutting table. There we go. As you can see, it's a massive space. Perfect. Here we go. So this is our pattern in our cutting table. I'm then just simply going to, with my large selection tool, So this is a small one, this is a large selection tool, or the black selection tool. I'm going to click and move this away, okay? Just so we have a bit of space between these two pattern pieces. Okay, so first of all, my block has got a lot going on here. I want to basically get rid of some of this information, so I've got something to work with. So I'm just going to get my big selection tool up here. I'm going to click the block, and I'm going to go Object, Ungroup, and that basically ungroups all the elements, so they're now individually selectable, which is great. Next, I'm going to, big selection tool, I'm going to click on this logo. Also, I'm going to click on all the other elements within it. Okay, just like this. I'm holding down my Shift key and just clicking on those points, or on those assets, until we have one big block, and then just going to click and drag that off to the side. So we now have a nice clean block here. Oops. Also, at the moment my pattern is very, very light, so I'm just going to up the line width on this. I'm also going to remove the fill, so I'm going to get my small selection tool, click on the block. I'm going to remove the fill by clicking on this first and then removing it. I'm also going to go over to my strokes over here, and let's just go 1 point. Perfect. Okay, so it's a little bit clearer. We haven't got a fill anymore, which is great, which means I can select inside of it. So now let's start drafting our block. Okay, so we have to make a decision on how, let's say, wide we want our shoulder to be, if that makes sense. So on our actual pattern, as you can see here, it's roughly about 4 or 5 centimeters. That was my decision. You could have it close to the neckline if you want, but I'm going to go with about 4 or 5 centimeters. And this obviously changes what your cowl neck will look like. So I'm just going to get my big section tool, click on this point. I'm going to go Edit, Copy, bring it over here, and then Edit, Paste. I'm then going to get the center of this and drag it to my shoulder point, just like so. Let's just zoom in. Okay, so once I've marked my point, I'm going to get my big section tool, click on that point, hit the Enter key on my keyboard, and I'm going to type in 5 centimeters horizontal and 0 vertical, and you can preview that. You see, there you go. I'm going to hit Copy instead of OK, because I want that point to remain. I'm then going to go to my, so with this item selected, I'm going to go to my rotation tool, click, I'm going to click on the center of that point, and I'm going to rotate this. See, it's 5 cm all the way around that central point. I'm going to rotate it until it meets that shoulder line. And that way I know for a fact that this point to this point is 5 centimeters, which is perfect. Okay, so I've now marked 5 cm on my shoulder line, which is great. Okay, next what I want to do is find the halfway point between these two. So I'm just going to get my point, I'm going to copy and paste it, and I'm going to put it roughly in the middle. Okay, and to find that absolute middle, I'm going to get my big selection tool, I'm going to click on this point, and this point, holding down the Shift key to do multiple selections, and I'm going to go Align, Horizontal Distribute, and Vertical Distribute. And to be fair, that's already in the center, which is perfect. Okay, so next we're going to draw some guidelines. Okay, we're going to start separating this top of this block up. So let's go over to our key and click on the guideline to get the attribute. Let's then go back and let's click on our line tool, and I'm going to draw from this point here. I'm going to click and drag until we get to the center. Let's say the center front, where the bust point meets the center front, which is great. Let's just click off. I'm going to draw another guideline. Okay, in fact no, I'm not. I'm going to get this line here, and I'm going to basically parallel it. So I'm going to hold down the Option key on the Mac, or Alt key on your keyboard, which gives you this little double arrow that allows you to copy, and just click and drag all the way up until pretty much, there we go, let's zoom in, and just, you can use the nudge keys on your keyboard, just nudge it up and down until you get to the middle point of that line, and it's parallel to the existing line. Let's then go to the small selection tool, click, and then drag that to that point. Essentially we're drawing a parallel line from these 2 points and where they hit on the center front line. Okay, so next what we can do is we're going to basically remove this whole upper part of this this block. So I'm going to go to my small selection tool, select, and I'm going to cut. Where's my cut tool? There it is, my scissors. And I'm going to cut at this shoulder point, and I'm also going to cut at the center front where this line intersects. Then I'm going to get my small selection tool, and then going to delete. So select that piece like that, and I'm going to delete backspace a few times. There we go. So that's my block. This is the first stage of our cowl neck. Okay, so next I'm going to get my small selection tool. I'm going to select my block, and then going to go to Pathfinder. Now if you can't find Pathfinder, just go to Window, and then down here somewhere you'll find Pathfinder, and that will pop up this little display. So with the block selected, I'm just going to hit Unite, and that will close that block. See, so now it's one whole entity, which is great. Okay, so next what we're going to do is, before we start adjusting our pattern, I'm going to take this dart point and move it up to the bust point. Okay, so we're going to close this dart at the bottom by a certain amount, which will then open up this top and allow us to create the cowl neck. But we need that to be at the bust point. Okay, so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my scissor tool. So first of all, get your small selection tool, click, we can get rid of that. Click on this outline, go to my cut tool, and I'm going to cut at this point and at this point, okay, along that bust line. Next, I'm going to select this upper panel here, go to my Pathfinder, and then unite these two blocks. Sorry, this block here, or unite these two points so that we have one whole continuous block. Same with the bottom. Going to select it and then unite it. Okay, so we now have two completely separate panels, which is great. Okay, so now you have another option when it comes to how much cowl neck you want. So you see the amount of like volume that you have here. This is all dependent on how much, let's say, how much you close this bottom dart here. So first of all, actually, let's just group this block so it's. So at the moment it's just an outline. We need to actually have all of these pieces involved. Okay, so I'm just going to get my big selection tool, click and drag over this area, and then go Object and then Group. Okay, so it's a completely separate element, but everything's now selectable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this block, I'm going to go to my rotation tool, and I'm going to rotate this closed. Now as I said, the amount you rotate this dart closed by, so if you rotate it fully and close it fully, you're going to have a lot of material at the top here. So this is one where you can't, there's no dart on this block. So this is the full amount of material in the top. Okay, so it's up to you. If you want to just simply have it a little bit, so you have a slight dart at the bottom and you have a slightly smaller cowl, this is how you produce that, and you can experiment and play around. Okay, so essentially, you know, that would create a very small cowl neck, slightly larger, much larger, and then that full dart closure will create a huge amount of volume at the top there, which is lovely. Okay, which is what we've actually created with this block here. So once again, I'm just going to basically, that's my dart. Let's go back. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to get my big selection tool. I'm going to click on this block. Oops, it's not grouped. Let's just group it. Object, group. I'm going to get this block here. I'm going to click on the rotation tool. I'm going to rotate at the bust point, and I'm going to click and I'm going to drag that closed. So just click and drag until those two meet, and that's my block. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to draw a guideline. Okay, a couple of guidelines here. So I'm going to get my, let's go back to our key, select the guideline to get the attributes, and then click on my line tool, click and then drag up the center front. You can also hold down the shift key, that will lock it to the vertical. Let go, and that's my center front guideline. Okay, so next I'm going to cut this top panel here. You see this dotted line? I'm going to cut this top area here. So go to your small selection tool, click on this outline, go to your cut tool, and just cut at that point and at that point. Okay, next, small selection tool, I'm going to unite that block, I'm going to unite the bottom block, and actually we don't need this dart anymore, so I'm going to get my small selection tool, click and drag over these two, and then go unite, and that should unite the two. Okay. Next what we're going to do is, this is all grouped, once again, we want to keep groupings because it's good practice. So this is all grouped, but I want to basically separate this top panel from this other block. So get your big selection tool, click, object, ungroup, there we go, and let's just take this top panel here, but let's also get that point as well. Let's go object, group, and then here let's get the whole of this two panels together, and then holding down the shift key I'm going to unselect the top, and then I'm going to go object, group. Okay, so now we have two completely separate groupings. Okay, looking lovely. If you make a mistake, you can always hit Control Z. So if I move that over here, you can hit Control Z and it'll go back. Same with this, Control Z. And also Shift Control Z will move it, will redo, so it'll go forward. Okay, so finally, to complete your cowl neck, or well, the next stage of your cowl neck drafting, we want to get the big selection tool, click on this upper panel, go to your rotation tool, and then click, and then rotate this until that top line is horizontal. Okay, you see this top edge here is horizontal. And we can do that just by simply getting our line tool, clicking on this point, holding down the shift key, and drawing a guideline out. And there you go, as you can see, it's pretty much horizontal. And let's just do that again. There you go, perfectly horizontal. Okay, excellent. Alright, so next, let's finalize this cowl neck block. Okay, so we can get rid of these guidelines, this top one anyway. So next I'm going to get my small selection tool. I'm going to click this point here and drag it out until it meets that center front line. I'm going to do exactly the same with this bottom one, small selection tool, find that point, click and drag it in until it meets the center front. Okay. We can also get rid of these little circles, these little points, we don't actually need them. So small selection tool, select the edge, delete a few times. Oops, let's zoom in, a bit hard to find. Delete it a few times. Delete it a few times. There's probably a line here as well. Yeah, we can delete that. So we're just cleaning the block up. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're basically going to finalize it. So here, we want to make sure we mark our bust point. Okay, we always want to have that bust point in place. So if you go to your circle tool or ellipse tool, and then you can just simply click and drag, holding down the Shift and Alt key. Shift and Alt will constrain it so it's even either side. So Shift and Alt, just let go, and there's your bust point. Because we're now going to get rid of these lines, okay? We're going to consolidate our block. So once you get your small selection tool, select the outline, go to your pen tool, click and hold, go to delete anchor point, and just delete, delete, and then we can get our small point, or small selection tool, click, and then drag, and let's basically move it up into this area as well. So these two blocks are overlapping. And next we're going to go to our Pathfinder and just unite it. Okay, so that's essentially our finished cowl neck block. There's one thing we need to do. We've got a bit of a dent here in the shoulder. We want this to be one nice, lovely, smooth line. Okay, so to do that, we're going to go to our pen tool, click and hold, pen, and we're going to click at this point, and then at this point, and before we click, we're going to click and hold, and that allows us, so if you click and drag, you can create these really wonderful, lovely lines. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to click and drag, and then I'm going to move those Bezier handles. There we go. Until, let's say, that one is at the point of those two, and then just small selection tool, click off. Okay, that's probably quite straight. We probably want it to be a little bit more curved, so I'm going to go to my pen tool, click and hold, go to the anchor point tool, and do the opposite side as well. You see that? You can actually amend these with this tool. So just pull that in, and pull that in as well, and that gives us a nice, clean curve. And we just want to get rid of our existing point, so go to your small selection tool, click on the outline of your block, there you go. Let's just cut, cut, and cut, and then let's just hit backspace a few times. Okay, there you go, lovely. Okay, so next we want to join, see these two separate elements, we want to join these two together. So small selection tool, click and drag, then go join, click and drag, right click, and then join. And that's now one complete block, which is lovely. Okay, so next we're going to create the facing for our cowl neck. So basically it's a replication of this top, and it kind of comes down here, but let me explain that. Okay, so the facing essentially is the rolls. You see this kind of rolls over to the inside of our garment. Well, essentially this top line here is that top line there, but we obviously can't have a raw edge here, so we have a facing that goes on the inside, and that's essentially what we're about to draft. And what it looks like is something like this. So let's just get our pen tool. So just go click and hold, pen tool. I'm going to click at this point, and I'm going to go to roughly about, I don't know, let's say 2/3 of the way down the center front from the neckline to the bust point. I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag, click and hold, and just drag that line out. Okay, I'm going to hold down the Shift key as well to lock it to the horizontal, because that will create a nice smooth curve at the center front. And also you just want to make sure that you do not go past this armhole line. Okay, just keep it quite shallow. Maybe you want to move this point up a little bit, it might make it a little bit cleaner. There we go, about that. That looks perfect. Lovely. Okay, so maybe, 3/5 of the way down. Okay, so this is essentially is gonna, if you imagine, this is now the inside of the garment, so this is the roll on the curve over to the inside. So this is the kind of shape we're looking for. But I want this to be all, I don't want actually this to be a seam line here, I want this to be all one continuous block. So what we do is, I'm going to copy this block, okay? Let's just actually get this right out of the way. I'm going to get my big section tool, I'm going to select that line, I'm going to select this block, and I'm going to go edit, copy, edit, paste. So I have a duplication of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my small selection tool. I'm going to click on this big panel here. I'm going to get my cut. I'm going to cut at this point and also where that point meets the center front. I'm then going to just delete this this lower block here. So small selection tool, click and drag, hit backspace a few times, and there we have essentially what would be the inside or the facing of our block. I'm just going to join these 2 points. Join. So sorry, small selection tool, click and drag, click and hold and drag, and then just right click, join. And that's now one block. So what we're going to do now is I'm just simply going to take this over, just like that, and I'm going to reflect it. So I'm going to go right click, so big selection tool, I'm going to right click, and then, where is it? Transform, reflect, and then horizontally, you see? And we've got a preview there, which is great, and click OK. So I'm just going to drag this up to the top. There you go. As you can see, we're now, there we go. Let's just move that into place. So simply, big selection tool, click and drag that new element into place. Also with the small selection key, with the small arrow keys, you can nudge this around just to make sure it's in place, which is perfect. Okay, I'm just going to make this a guideline because it would be good to know where this folds over to on the inside of the garment. So small selection tool, click on that line, go to your eyedropper tool, and then pick up the attributes of our guidelines. There you go. And here I'm going to go to my small selection tool, I'm going to click and drag over those 2 blocks. I'm going to go to my pathfinder, I'm going to unite those 2 together. Now this might happen sometimes. All it means is simply that your blocks were not overlapping perfectly. So let's go back. So for example, what you might find is that your block really isn't overlapping like that, and then you go to join them, but they won't join. Essentially, to use the pathfinder tool, you need to have them overlapping just a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. Okay, so just select those 2 blocks and then just join. Okay, and you might find you get a little element here. That's fine. Just go to the small selection tool. You can see the points. Just go to your pen tool, minus anchor point, minus, 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 minus. Okay, great. So that is your front cowl neck pretty much finished off. We're just going to put in a guideline here, or a fold line, because this is essentially where the garment, this is actually your neckline, and this is where the facing would fold into the opposite side. I hope that's clear. So I've basically just drawn a guideline. Go to your line tool, click and drag, hold down the shift key to make sure it locks to horizontal, and then just go to where is it? Your eyedropper tool, and let's just go to the key, fold line. That's why this is handy, and we use the pattern cutting table, or the cutting table. Alright, that's great. So, but now at the moment we have half a block, which is brilliant. I mean, if we could have a seam allowance down here, but it wouldn't be great. It would look a bit shabby on the block. So now we need to make this into one full item, or one full pattern, which is reflected. So I'm just going to my big selection tool. I'm going to click and drag over this whole element here, this whole block, and I'm going to right click. Let's just group it as well. I'm going to right click and go transform, reflect, and then we're going to go vertical, and we're going to hit copy. And what it does is it creates a copy of it, but a reflected copy. Okay, so that's essentially our pattern, but obviously you just want to join these 2 together, so just marry them up. There we go, like so. And you can always use the little arrow key just to nudge it once in case they don't overlap. And then get your small selection tool, click and drag, and then just go to your unite. There we go. Now we don't have a center front seam here, but we should obviously have a guideline just so it's clear on your pattern pieces. So as you can see, if you use the small selection tool, click on the outline here, it'll give you a location for that point. Get a line, click and drag from that point down to the bottom one, or as I said, use the shift key, that will lock it into place. There we go. And then let's just get our eyedropper tool, and then let's just get our guideline. Okay, perfect. Alright, lovely. So that's the front of our block. We're now going to start polishing it off. We're going to add some information to it. So let's just scroll down and find this information here. Okay, so first of all, let's get our Pattern Lab logo and also the details of what this block is all about. Let's just, it's a big selection tool. Let's just click and drag. Let's put it here. Quite a nice bit of space. Zoom in, and then let's go to our small selection tool, and you can now click and edit the text. So we're going to put here, what is it? Cowl neck block, and then front panel, and you can even put in, let's say, right, 3C Francesca. Oops, let's not do that. Okay, so these aren't, yeah, you can leave it like that if you want to, or what I prefer to do is if you get your small selection tool, click on it, you can just go center a line, same with these, just, you know. get your big selection tool, click, and you go Object, ungroup that, and then just you can now align those in Object Group. You can also put other details on here as well if you want. It's completely up to you, but that's perfect. I would also say put on a grain line. Now with a cowl neck, the reason why you get this really beautiful sort of like soft fold, well this is actually linen so it's a bit more static, but you can get a really lovely soft fold with satin because it must be cut on the bias. Now on the bias what I mean is the grain line, so let's grab our grain line here. The grain line, instead of running vertically with the center front seam, it actually goes diagonally, okay, like that. So you'd cut your pattern with the fabric running this direction, or yeah, the grain line running this direction. So to do that, simply grab your grain line here, okay. It might be separate elements. Just get your big selection tool, click and drag that top part, and then hold down the Shift key, select the bottom bit, go Object, Group, and then just move it up onto your block, like so, and then go to the edge here, you see you've got a little rotation tool, click and drag, and then hold down the Shift key, and it will lock it to vertical, horizontal, etc., but go diagonal. And then just drag it into place wherever you want it. Let's say put it there, for example, just so it's clear. You can also add in this content here, so look, center front, I wouldn't say place on fold, because that's no longer a fold. Small selection tool, then just, you can get rid of that. So center front line, that's nice. We can also have the bust line and bust point, so let's just put bust line here. There we go. You can nudge it with your arrow keys. Bust point we already have, so we can get rid of that. Delete. Okay, so that's pretty much the cowl neck for the front. Now we have to do the back. Yeah, it essentially looks like a long process, but it's actually quite quick once you get the hang of Adobe Illustrator. So let's just go our big selection tool. Just going to grab this whole block, object. Let's group it all so we can move it around as one item. Let's put it off to the left here, and let's get the back panel. Okay, now we're going to start basically transferring this information, so the shoulder length, to the actual back and creating a nice back line. So first of all, I'm going to get my small selection tool. I'm going to just, okay, first of all, remove the fill from this block. Looks like I've already done that, but let's just do it anyway. Remove, and I'm also going to up the line width so we can actually see what we're working with. So 1 point is perfect. Okay, next, I'm going to get my big selection tool, and then going to select the whole item, object, ungroup, and I'm going to move this information over because I don't really want this at the moment. In fact, we can leave this on. Let's just nudge it down a bit. We can leave the bust line and the center back because essentially with this block we're going to we don't want it to be double like this. We're actually going to have an opening at the back like a zip or something. So this is just going to be one single-sided piece. It's not going to be folded out. Let's also take the grain line. So with this big selection tool, let's just grab, hold down the Shift key, grab those elements. We can obviously object. Let's just group that now, so it's one piece. Move that over here. There we go. Clean it up a little bit. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, we're going to draw a guideline. So let's get our guideline. Select. Let's get a line tool. And we'll draw a guideline from point to point across the shoulder. Okay. Next, we're going to get a point. Just like before, we're going to copy that, and I'm going to paste that in. There we go. To the shoulder. And if you remember, our shoulder width was 5 centimeters. Okay. On here it was 5 cm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that point, big selection tool, hit the enter key, and go -5 and 0 vertical. As you can see with the preview on, you can see that -5 takes it horizontal to the left, and +5 takes it horizontal to the right. Okay, so we want to go -5. Same with vertical, it's minus to go up and plus to go down, and just hit copy. Next we go to our rotation tool, click, and then find the center of that point, click, and then rotate this up so we know that that is, sorry, wrong one. Rotate this to the guideline. Oh, it's been a bit glitchy. Rotate it to the guideline so we know that it's 5 cm from this point to this point along that guideline. Perfect. Okay, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to start drafting my block. So it's completely up to you now how you want to have your back neck. Because it's a cowl and there's a lot of material on the front of the body, you see there's a lot of material here, you kind of want to have not too much of a scoop on the back. You can get away with it, but not a huge amount. So I would say at this point, it's up to you how low you want your back to be. So I'm going to select this point, big selection tool, select this point, I'm going to hit copy, and paste that in, and I'm going to put it at the nape of the neck or the back neck point. Now you can measure down the body with your tape measure. let's say, oh, I don't know, I'm going to say 6 cm, for example. So that could be a nice finishing height down the back of the So essentially, we would draw now a neckline, either a square or we'd draw something like that. So this would be a nice smooth scoop to your neckline. I mean, you could even take this lower. You could go, well, actually, I don't want it to be 6, I want it to be 10. So let's add 4 cm. Hit OK. So that's now 10 cm between these 2 points. Then you can go, right, let's draw a guideline between those 2 points. So get your pen tool, click on the shoulder point, click and drag, and that's a really big scoop of a neckline. Or quite possibly, you don't want any drop at all. Well, actually, hang on, where is it? You want maybe, let's say, 2.5 cm. 2.5 cm vertical drop, copy, and that's a really, really subtle back neckline, like that. There you go. So it's completely up to you how you do this. I would say let's keep it classic and have a really nice, subtle, a nice, subtle scoop, a little one, nothing too dramatic. So anyway, let's do that. So essentially, we've now got our shoulder point, or our, let's say our new side neck point, which matches this block here. So let's go down, let's say 3 cm. So get your big selection tool. Sorry, I'm getting away with myself. Grab this point, edit, copy, paste it in. So edit, paste. Take it to the back neck or the nape of the neck. Hit the enter key, and then go down by whatever you decide. I'm going to do 3 cm. Let's get the pen tool, click and hold, and then click on the shoulder, click and hold, and then you can drag that out, holding the shift key to lock it to the horizontal. There you go, that's a really nice, lovely, smooth slope. Okay, right, next what we're going to do is, we can pretty much get rid of this entire top piece here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my small selection tool. I'm going to select this top piece. I'm going to get my cut tool, cut, and then also cut here. Okay, we don't want any of this top area. So I'm going to get my small selection tool, select, and then delete, 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 and get rid of that point too, which was the nape. I can also get rid of this guideline. Let's just delete that as well. So next I'm just going to go to my pen tool. I'm going to select that point, and I'm going to join it to that point, but that's not working, so let's not do that. Sorry, forgive me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my small selection tool. I'm going to select that anchor point. I'm going to hold down the shift key and then select. That's why. Okay. In that case, I'm going to grab this line here. I'm going to select the line first, which brings up the option to select that point. I'm then going to select the point. I'm then going to go over to this line, select the line, and then select the point, all the while holding down the shift key. And then I'm going to right click and then join. I'm getting into the real things of pattern cutting in Illustrator here. Anyway, so once you have your block, you just want to select it with your small selection tool and then just go to Pathfinder and just unite. That just makes sure it's all one item, which is fab. Okay, so as essentially this has a facing, okay, and we want our back to have a facing as well, okay. So to do that, we have to create a completely unique panel. And this is unique to the cowl neck, okay? We have a tutorial on how to create facings, but we kind of create the facings for the cowl neck, okay? So I'm just going to select this block, get the big selection tool, select this block. I'm going to copy and paste it somewhere else, very similar to what we did here. I'm then going to, actually no, let's get rid of that. Let's go back. Let's select this block. Let's get the pen tool. And let's get the pen tool, and let's, from this point here, so this corner point, I'm going to click, and then I'm going to go to, let's say, roughly about the same distance, about 5 cm down the back here. Let's say about there. I mean, you can measure this yourself if you want to. I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to draw a facing. Okay, a nice smooth curve, similar to how we did the neckline. I'm going to go to a small selection tool, and you can actually nudge this up and down. So, arrow keys, up and down. If you hold down the shift key, it nudges quite a lot. So let's just make that kind of even. There we go. Let's nudge it up a little bit. Let's also drag this out. That's a lovely facing. Okay, perfect. So once we have our facing, let's create a guideline out of that. So let's go small selection tool, select that line, eyedropper, and then get the attributes. Next, let's get our big selection tool, select the actual block, hold down the shift key, and select that line. Then go edit, copy, edit, paste. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my small selection tool, select the outline, then get my cut tool. Here we go. Cut and cut. And then I'm just going to completely delete this lower block. So this is essentially our facing, which would be joined here. Next, I'm just going to get my small selection tool, click and drag over those two corner points, right click, join, click and drag, right click, join. So that's one item. Then we go to our dipper tool and then get the line attributes. Okay. Generally, this is our guideline. This is our pattern line. So that, look, is a really beautiful facing that just slots in there, and also it would connect to this. Now, this is the moment of truth. I don't think I've done this right, but let's just reflect. Okay. That point. Rotate. There we go. Yeah, essentially it fits. So once you connect these two up and join those two lines, it will fit. Lovely. So that's our facing. Okay, so we're pretty much finished now. There's just one thing left to do, which is basically notches. Okay, so it's important to notch your blocks so you can actually see where these two pieces fit in. So in other words, when you were to actually sew these together, you want to know how they fit together. So we have these little dots here, which are notches. So I'm just going to basically go over to my panel here, or my key, get my big selection tool, get my notch. I'm going to copy and paste the one in, and I'm going to add it, let's say anywhere. Let's put it halfway along that line. Okay, you want to make sure that it is halfway along the line. Sorry, you want to make sure that it falls on the center of the line, just like that. Perfect. And then we're just going to go copy paste again, and we're going to put two in place. And the reason why is because we need one for the actual pattern, and we need one for the facing. So I'm going to get my big selection tool. Once they're both in place, click on one, then hold down the shift key to multiple select, click on my facing panel, and then I'm just going to drag that away. There you go. You see, we've got one that's been left behind, we've got one that's come with us. Next, I'm going to go big selection tool, click and drag. Let's just group that. Let's also group our block here as well. Look, there's loads of things that aren't actually being selected. So let's just get the whole thing, and then just go object group. So when you use and move things around, everything's, you know, one nice big, they're all individual items which are all grouped together. Also, we can now probably remove these points because they're just essentially redundant. We just use them for measuring. So just select, delete them, small selection tool, delete. There we go. Alright, smashing. So that is our cow block. Let's just move that into place. And once again, we can add this content. So this is obviously, it is what? Copy. Paste that in. Let's make that centralized, which it is. And then we have back panel. Yep, there's some information on there as well. Let's keep that all in place. Select that. Let's go object. Let's ungroup it. Then let's align it. Object and then group it. And same with this as well. So obviously we're not cutting this on the bias because it doesn't need to be. So we're just going to have our grain line exactly as is. And you can also add information to the top here. I wouldn't recommend putting in all of this information because it's not going to fit, so I would just name it. So by doing that, you can just go to the text tool, text, type in here, what is it, 3C, Francesca, cowl neck, block, and then we're going to go, what is it, back facing panel. Let's make that slightly larger. There we go. Let's just change that case to uppercase. Don't worry about all this. As long as you name your block, it's fine. And let's also add a grain line to it. We can actually reduce the size of that. There we go, just by shrinking it. And let's get the attributes of that. There we go. Yeah, lovely. Okay. Alright, so next what we're going to do is we're going to add seam allowance to this and add it to a PDF printout. So first of all, let's just go File, Save. You should essentially save this all the way along, actually. It's probably a good idea. Also, don't save it as cutting table, which I've just done. You want to go File, Save As. And then within this, obviously, this folder, which is Francesca 3C cowl neck, you want to basically name it, what we're going to call it, 3C Francesca cowl neck pattern. Okay, and save it as either an AI document or an SVG. It's up to you. SVG works in pretty much anything. AI is obviously just for AI, so I'm going to save it as an SVG. It's just scalable vector graphics. Save it. Oh, export, yeah, click OK, and that will save that item. Okay, so now our pattern is pretty much finished off. The only thing left to do now is either you can take a look at our other design tutorials, like necklines or sleeves, for example, which will show you how to maybe add a different sleeve type or a different neckline to basically customize your pattern further. However, if you feel like your pattern is finished, then I would say the best thing to do is head on over to a different tutorial, which is how to add seam allowance to your finished pattern. There's a download link at the bottom of this tutorial, which should take you to that. It's very, very informative, very, very easy as well. And also, when you've added your seam allowance, it's probably a good idea to have a look at how to transfer your digital pattern to a multi-page PDF using our templates. And we have a tutorial that shows you how to do that also. And once again, you can find that at the bottom of this page as a tutorial link. Otherwise, thank you so much, and see you soon.